The Asian Cup is officially 6 months away, finally kicking off in 2024. It was supposed to be in 2023, but a couple things happened, and next thing you know, the tournament's back in Qatar. But we're not going to talk about that in today's video. What we are going to discuss are the biggest storylines heading into this Asian Cup, the burning questions that need to be answered. And I'm very honored and happy to be accompanied by Martin Lowe, writer for the Asian Game, on today's podcast. And Martin, I hope that you're ready to dig deep on some of these topics and possibly go to battle over a few of our takes here.
Yeah, no, looking forward to it. I'm sure we'll disagree on a couple of things, but yeah, 6 months away. It feels like it's been a long time coming. We should be kind of having it in China at the moment, as you say. We're moving to Qatar. Looking forward to it.
I think we have to start with one of the bigger storylines about this entire tournament, and that is in regards to Asia's best player. And I'm not talking about Mehdi Taremi for my Iranian subscribers out there. I'm talking about Son Heung-min and whether this Asian Cup will be his crowning moment with the national team. You know, do you have any thoughts on one, I guess, Korea's potential to win this tournament and what an Asian Cup for the first time since 1960 would mean for the Korean national team?
Oh, it'd be massive. It'd be massive for Korea to kind of get that monkey off the back a little bit. They're the sizable kind of giants in Asian football alongside Japan. They're the kind of the key players in Asian football. To not have won an Asian Cup since 1960 is incredible. And as you mentioned, the best Asian player at the moment and the best player for even on a kind of world stage in Son Heung-min over the last 5-6 years, having that sort of player, it's going to be a missed opportunity if they miss it. I think it's Son's best opportunity as an individual. I think he's in the best form of his career to date, considering kind of the Asian Cups where he was previously. I think he's matured into that role. I think there was always that kind of pressure that he was so much head and shoulders above everybody. He had to carry Korea. I think he didn't take that expectation well enough, whereas I think he's in that frame of mind. I think the one caveat is going to be Jurgen Klinsmann, who is just really not started his Korean career off well. We're 6 months away. He's chopping and changing stuff. So as much as it should be Son's defining point, I can't see at this moment in time that Korea are going to beat the kind of one or two at the top, unfortunately. How about yourself?
Yeah, when I saw the plans to possibly have Son playing as a box-to-box midfielder, I was a little concerned for my Korean friends out there. How would you rank Korea in the hierarchy of favorites for this Asian Cup? Because I think we'd probably be in agreement Japan is number one. Maybe Korea. Honestly, I think I'd have them three. I think I'd have Australia number two, personally. I don't know how you feel about
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I think there's two sets of kind of rankings that you could potentially do it on squad basis. I think Japan are ahead on paper, but I think it's quite a congested field behind them, which Korea could potentially be second. But I think what you're right in terms of flagging Australia, the fact that they've got consistency, they've got Graham Arnold in place. I think that's going to count a hell of a lot in their favour. The same with Japan and Moriyasu, and that puts them ahead of the likes of Korea with Klinsmann. There's still a question mark there. Iran with Galanei. Saudi Arabia still haven't got a coach. Qatar with Kiros, etc. I think that added consistency, given that it's so close to where we are at the moment, and the fact that they're still kind of playing around with things in terms of where we're going to go to next, I think that puts kind of Japan and Australia at the top of the tree. But as you say, 6 months away, there's a lot of games in between. World Cup qualification comes back
Yeah.
again. Klinsmann might click it into gear, and I think they've got the players there to challenge, definitely. I think on paper their squad is better than Australia's at the moment. I think Australia got a young team coming through, but I think their squad is better than them. It's all about the coaching and see if they are able to kind of deploy that on the pitch.
Yeah, Korea definitely star-studded team. I've said this in multiple videos with my other friends who have featured on the channel. You know, Kim Min-jae, Serie A Defender of the Year, arguably the best center back in Europe. I think there's a really strong case to make there. Son Heung-min, You have Egang in, who looks like he's heading to PSG for a
Mm.
bargain of 20 million. I can't believe that price tag. It's just, can the pieces around the stars step up? That's kind of my main concern with Korea, outside of Jurgen Klinsmann just having a howler with a lineup for the Tactics one game and just trying to get a little too creative with it. Do you get the sense that you probably have a lot more conversations with people who follow closely Asia more so than I do? Do you get the sense that even if Korea don't win, do you get the sense that Son will be regarded as, dare I say, the best Asian player, or does he need that Asian Cup to kind of leapfrog a Cha Boom even?
I think the way that the world works now, and the European football being so centred to everything as a success side of things, I think Son Heung-min's going to have that kind of pedestal there as being one of the best in Asia, especially from an East Asian perspective. I think, irrespective of him winning the Asian Cup or not, and it's another debate for another time, I suppose, to kind of discuss whether the Asian Cup means as much to Asian football fans anymore as it once did. Another thing is that Son Heung-min didn't play the group stages of the last Asian Cup because Tottenham wouldn't release him, and I think that kind of spells significance that this probably is down the pecking order of importance. I think Klinsmann, in his mind, will be looking towards the World Cup qualification, potentially even kind of competing with friendlies against the Europeans rather than really kind of putting priority on the Asian Cup. So that's my only concern. But in terms of how he will be regarded once he retires, I can't see him kind of being disregarded for not having an Asian Cup. I think he's done so much to push forward Asian football by just his presence in the Premier League and the top 5 European leagues. He'll be considered forever great, I think.
So you talked about how the world sees it. How does Martin Lowe see it? Do you think Son is the best Korean footballer of all time?
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think I'm always one of these people that's kind of probably controversial that the modern day footballer is by necessarily better than the olden day footballer. We've come so far in terms of our progress, in terms of football in heritage across the world, let alone the quality in football in Asia as well. You can see that kind of consistent ability that Son has defined, both to be a leader for his national team, but also a leader within a club like Tottenham, and to be so well regarded within the Premiership. The comparison I would put it against, and kind of a modern day side of things, is the Park Ji-sung kind of reference point, who would be potentially a few years ago would have been in the same argument within that. And I think
Mhm.
Park was able to kind of go on and get success on the Champions League basis. He was able to get that side of things. But I think on an individual level, it's broken away from that kind of stereotypical that East Asian players fit a specific box. A player that can do running for you, is a good cog within the system, but not an excellent player on an individual basis. And I think Son's blown that out of the water. We'll see Kim Min-jae do the same in terms of how he's regarded as an Asian centre-back, which I don't think we've ever really kind of grasped in Asia as such. So I think it's that genre-defining kind of moment. So yeah, definitely for me, I wasn't around really for Char's kind of development as such back in the early days. So, but from my eyes only, yeah, Son Heung-min's the best Korean player of all time.
Okay. Well, I can say confidently that I agree with you. I also don't know if you know this, but I'm a massive Tottenham fan as well. But even my
Right,
bias
okay.
aside, I still think he's the best. If you're talking about an individual talent level, of course, like the trophy captain might say otherwise, but when you just look at the player, I don't even know if there's really much of an argument anymore. But maybe y'all can disagree in the comments if that's how you feel about it. I was going to touch on it at the end, but I think it's a good point now to bring it up, the importance of the Asian Cup, and you sent that over to me,
Mm.
and I kind of want you to carry this one a little bit because I'm really curious. Do you hear that the Asian Cup itself is not regarded as a priority, maybe by like people within the Asian sphere and the European community as well? Like, what do you think? What insight can you give there?
Well, there's always been that limitation by, as I say, the focus of world football is on Europe and kind of success in European sphere, and there be that European club football or kind of at the pinnacle is the World Cup, of course. And I think it's kind of ironic at a time where Asian football has gone to that next stage. They're gaining credibility and how they've achieved at the World Cup, and we're seeing more and more players go to bigger clubs, it might start to diminish what kind of product is back home as such. And I think that's what we'll start to see at the Asian Cup. And we've already seen, obviously, in your kind of neck of the woods in North America, the fact that the Gold Cup is just an afterthought. You're sending in reserve teams. And I don't think we're at that stage yet, but I can see it further down the line. Already discussions around kind of why would you kind of consider it more important than a European club season. So I think there's that kind of move away from it. I think there's been generally across Asia a real disregard to Asian Cup and World Cup qualification. The fact that the quality of Asian football past the elite teams isn't that hot. As somebody that loves kind of the various levels of Asian football, I don't feel that, but I do believe that is obviously going to be, it's going to gnaw at some people's minds. I think there's a clear split in kind of where we see the future direction of Asian football in terms of West Asian, East Asian. The continent feels bigger than it's ever done before, especially around controversial hostings like Qatar and Saudi Arabia going forward. So I think it's a tumultuous time, which I don't think everybody's kind of playing to their unity in that. And I think the casualty of that could be the Asian Cup, not for this round, but maybe in the years to come, where we'll start to see the likes of Son Heung-min saying, actually, I'm going to stay with Tottenham, and Korea will kind of admit that and kind of say, yeah, that's fine. As long as you're playing for us at the World Cup, we're happy with that. That's just a kind of an inkling I feel to be getting, and I don't see the same excitement as potentially once was for an Asian Cup, unfortunately.
I think you just described like a doomsday scenario for me personally. I would be absolutely devastated if the Asian Cup was treated like the Gold Cup. Because like you said, yeah, that's my neck of the woods. That's how we regard our continental tournament, and I just think it's become completely Mickey Mouse. Like nobody really cares about it. I guess you could say it's an opportunity for a underdog like a Jamaica or a Panama to potentially win. Maybe in Asia's case, maybe an Iran get their first trophy in a very, very long time. But I love the Asian Cup, and I could talk for probably hours about what I love about the Asian Cup. And I think if we got to the point where it's basically a domestic K League and J League squad, and the A League guys, even for the Australians, I I think that would be a massive loss for the world of football. I think there's a lot of talent in this region. I am more excited for the Asian Cup than I am for definitely for the Gold Cup and arguably the Copa America as well. So yeah, if it ever got diminished, oh my gosh, I think my faith in football would take a hit. I'm gonna try to not let that kill my vibe. That got me really sad thinking about that. But when you say excitement, when you say you don't see the same amount of excitement, is that from like Korean, Japanese, Australian fans, or is it the FAs who doesn't seem excited anymore?
I think it's from a fan perspective, and as I mentioned, if you're a Japanese or Korean fan, this is kind of a limitation that Asian club football has in the Champions League. There isn't that kind of passion for football of Asian football as such. There is a passion for your individual club, that club side that plays in the domestic league, and there's a passion for those players that are involved in it. But outside of that bubble, there isn't a kind of real rivalry in Asian football. Aside from maybe Japan against Korea would be a kind of a massive spectacle, but Korea facing kind of the odds and sods of Asian football, there's probably no real excitement there. It's kind of it's the next level is always looking towards the World Cup, and you hear that with most of the kind of managers speaking about kind of that's the pinnacle, that's where we're going to be looking forward to. And the fact that we've got an expanded World Cup and we'll kind of have a little bit more of a leeway in, I think there's more focus on kind of how can we maximise our kind of potential on a global standard rather than in Asia. But that really goes back to kind of Asia's just far too big for a continent to kind of really succeed. There is very little in common between a West Asian kind of football fan and an East Asian football fan. And there's a lot of kind of back and forth of kind of who's better and who's not, but the cultures are completely different, and you don't have that same kind of appetite where we're looking in at Europe and seeing the Euros is the spectacle we all want it to be, but they're all very small countries next to one another with a lot of cultural kind of similarities. I don't think we see that same kind of dynamic in Asian football. As I say, I want it to happen, and I think that it is a case, especially for the club football. I think it can succeed once you start to see kind of greater kind of attendances in place. Once you see that kind of excitement on a local level, you're going to feel that through the whole of the continent. But at the
Mhm.
moment, I think it's lacking at the moment.
Do you think winning an Asian Cup benefits to any degree the reputation of the winner?
I think so. Yeah, I think. Well, it can have kind of one of two ways. I think the Qatari side of things, when they out of the blue won the event, it was kind of diminished the event as a whole. As such, you had Western viewers kind of saying, "Well, even Qatar were Asian champions. It must not be a great tournament." But we all know, watching that event, how good that team was for that very small moment in time. I think it was a massive opportunity for Australian football generally when they won in 2015, but a lot of that came because it was at home and then kind of running through that. So I think it's in that moment of what's kind of happening at that stage, and I think it's a big kind of what if moment of what that kind of comes thing. If somebody like Japan won it again, I think it would be a big deal, but I think they've got bigger plans to kind of with
Hmm.
for global domination, and I think they're on that way to do it as being a top five team in the world in the next 20 years. I can see that happening. So it depends at where you are on that kind of development level.
Hmm. Yeah, let's transition into the performance of these teams at the Asian Cup. I wanted to have a discussion around which managers have the hottest seats heading into this World Cup. I have my selection, but I would like you to go first as the honorary guest. Who do you think? Who do you think their seat is getting a little too hot?
I think, yeah, I think we've mentioned him already. I think Jurgen Klinsmann's the hottest of hot seats. I think he had a hot seat when he first landed. I don't think any Korean fan was kind of enamoured by the decision,
Yep.
and then consequently we've seen it kind of materialise within a couple of windows. So I think he's got a hot seat. Kind of out off the radar. I think Alexander Ilicic at Lebanon may not even make the Asian Cup at the moment. He's only just been given the job, I think, the latter part of last year, but he's already on rocky ground to kind of potentially not be in place at all. I think the managers who will be kind of looking at they need to get something from this, as in they don't need, as long as there's not a failure in it, they need to have something. Amoriasu and Arnold, and I think those are the two managers that have an established play in place. They should be favourites because they haven't got an excuse of, oh, I've only just come into this role. So I think they need to not have a bad day. I think they could probably get to the semi-quarterfinals and probably not get away with it a little bit, but they should be kind of fighting for the pointy end of things. I've probably covered about 5, 6 managers there, so I apologise if I
No,
didn't
no,
tell
no. That
you.
was
But
great.
who do you think are the kind of managers under pressure for yourself?
I knew you were going to bring up a manager from a small team, and that's what I was counting on. I had not considered the Lebanese manager, but I will have to look into his situation after we finish up here. Um, I had Klinsmann as my number one guy, but I had Moriyasu as well. And you said quarterfinals. I think that's a massive L if Japan go out in the quarterfinals.
Mm.
I don't care if it's on penalties. I don't care if it's versus Australia. But, if the draw ends up being that way, I think they have to be in the final. You kind of brought up one of the big benefits that Australia and Japan have is stability. They've had the same
Mm.
manager going on several years now. They've both signed, correct me if I'm wrong, until 2026, correct?
Mm. Yep.
So to me, and having the best squad on paper, quarterfinals, that would be embarrassing. That'd be an embarrassment. I'm not sure if it gets Moriyasu sacked, but I can imagine Japanese Twitter will be very, very angry if something like that happens. I think with Graham Arnold, who I had a question mark next to him, I wasn't sure if we think his seat is warm or not. I think the young team that he'll likely be bringing offers a little protection. You know what I'm
Mm.
saying? With Japan, I feel like they got too many guys in their late 20s. Junya Ito's 30, I want to say, probably one of the best players in Asia right now. I don't think Moriyasu will have that luxury of, oh, well, I mean, it's their first tournament. These guys are just breaking into the senior team. I think he needs a final and probably needs to win it. Graham Arnold, a quarterfinal for Australia. Is that a oof. Could they go out to the to the Iraqi national team. How do they take that back home? I don't know. I feel like they'd be pretty distraught by that result too. What do you think about Galani from Iran? Is that how you pronounce
Yep.
it? What do you think about his
Yeah.
situation?
Well, it's an interesting one because I think any Iranian fans want to potentially have him as the kind of coach. Felix Sanchez was offered the job by the Iranian Football Federation. But the Iranian Football Federation said they wanted a short-term employment. They wanted to look at the Asian Cup as being the kind of, we need to be kind of focusing on that as a kind of a short-term objective. Felix Sanchez said, I need longer than that, which I completely agree with. I think the Iranian national team needs an overhaul. There's a lot of Asian players within that. None of them are going to, well, I say none of them, the vast majority of them aren't going to be playing at the 2026 World Cup. So you need an overhaul at that stage. Gallinari he's a well-known manager within Iranian football. He knows how to play the Iranian Football Federation, which is one of the key roles of being the Iranian coach. But it doesn't give that excitement, I don't think. And I think he's shown in the CAF Nations Cup the other day he can play to the strengths in terms of Azmoun and Taremi. But has he got that kind of winning mentality when you play the likes of Japan, Korea, and Australia? It's going to be a question mark. So as I say, he'll have a hot seat because I don't expect, unless he wins it, I don't think his contract's going to be extended, to be honest. I think it's a very difficult job to be in. I think Iran have got eyes on another coach, probably an overseas coach, to guide them through to 2026 and do this overhaul. At the moment, he's keeping the team warm rather than actually thinking his seat is warm and he's under pressure as such. He's got it all to gain, really. He's got to kind of win over the Iranian fans, which I don't think is going to be an easy task at all.
Yeah, my Iranian friends were not too happy with the appointment. Just to add some context for our listeners, he was the manager at the 2007 Asian Cup
Mm.
for Iran, in which they were knocked out in the quarterfinals to South Korea on penalties. I think I was maybe telling my friend off air. I think Iran and Korea are like particularly very difficult jobs in Asia right now, kind of for different reasons. Maybe Iran, you got to bring in the new generation, get the old guard out, and kind of capitalize on the talent you have up front with Taremi and Azmoun. And then Korea, I just think the pressure of Son's window closing is a lot to deal with. Let's talk about some of the underdogs. Let's give some of the smaller teams some
Mm.
love. Which one of these underdogs, which one of these dark horses makes a run in this tournament? There's what I love about the Asian Cup. I was telling you off air is it's very unpredictable. There's always an upset every single tournament. Martin, why don't you give me a potential dark horse that you got in mind?
I don't know how dark it is. I suppose the dark the horse. Iraq's probably mine. I'm really interested in what Iraq are doing. Always very similar to Iran in kind of cultural terms, but also that floods through to their football scene in terms of there's a high amount of pressure on kind of the team, and we were talking about the importance of the Asian Cup. This will be the most important tournament of the year for Iraq. So no getting away from that. There will be pressure on those teams. Iraq have always struggled to manage those players that are playing at home in their domestic league with those players that are playing in Europe, who are second generation Iraqis that have come back and represented the national team. It's never been a good fit. They've never got on. The coach either side's one of them or the other. There's never been a cohesion.
Interesting.
During the last World Cup qualification, Shreko Katanec, who's now manager of Uzbekistan, stabilised things. He was able to kind of assure a kind of modern approach, a kind of common sense approach in terms of we're all here to play for the national team. Let's kind of get this ball kind of rolling, and we can do things. And obviously, they won the Asian Cup in the last decade as a surprise. And I don't discount them doing that potentially again. Jesus Casas, a Spanish coach, come in very eager, very engaged. He's based himself in Iraq, which isn't obviously the most easiest thing to do. He's won the Gulf Cup in January, so he's already got that success and the public backing. He has talked about, we'll bring through a more aesthetic game, which is completely different to the Iraqi way of playing, the full, hard, kind of direct, passionate football that they usually play. So it's an interesting mechanism, and they've got a couple of good players that are coming over from that they've been able to pick up through that second generation of Iraqis from Sweden. So I think they're going to go under the radar, and I think they've got a tough draw, but I think they'll do pretty well in terms of rising to that occasion and kind of surprising a few people, to be honest.
Yeah, I think we can all agree that Japan, Vietnam, Indonesia, Iraq is probably the
Mm.
toughest group in the entire Asian Cup. So feeling for Vietnam there, that's not the draw that they wanted. I think Iraq is a really good shout. I wanted to ask you if you know there's one guy he was playing for them at the U20 Asian Cup. I think his name is Ali Jassim. He was a winger. Do you
Yep,
know if he's
yep.
broken into the senior team?
He hasn't up to this point. I don't think he probably will by the time of the Asian Cup. He might be for somebody that will go through World Cup qualification. I think we saw at the World Cup, the Under-20 World Cup, he probably met his level. There was quite a lot of difficulties, and he wasn't able to get that kind of telling contribution, so
Hmm.
may miss out on it. He's an exciting player. Really like him, and he was really good at the Asian Under-20 Asian Cup. But it's probably going to be one for the next generation as such. It's interesting with Iraq because they've got so many players to kind of choose from through this diaspora, and who's in favour, who's not. There's players that haven't played for a few years who've been able to be clawed back in because of changes in politics, changes in that side of things. So they're always an interesting one. You probably won't be able to select a good squad, definitely, until you kind of run up to it. But yeah, definitely an interesting team.
I don't know how closely you follow CONCACAF, but the second you said that, I just immediately thought of Jamaica, where you have like the Jamaican born players and the English born players almost always have some sort of divide. The manager, yeah, he
Mm,
picks one or the other, and then Jamaica implode at a tournament.
mm,
So that hasn't happened yet at the Gold Cup. I mean, they haven't played a single decent team outside of like the United States D team, you could argue, but we'll see how they do against Guatemala in the quarters. We don't have to take it to CONCACAF, and I really don't want to. I'm kind of tired of that conference. I have a shout. Uh, Jordan. I've been looking at the recent results. Manager under Adnan Hamad, they've looked pretty solid. I think they lost to Serbia 3-2, made it to the knockout round 3 of the last 5 tournaments. I don't think they've ever won a knockout game. I need to check myself on that, but I think they lose every time they get there. But
mm.
kind of look like a team that are heading into the tournament in pretty good form. Seems like they got some good attackers on the squad. And I didn't want to agree with you and say Iraq. So I'm going to say Jordan is a good nomination. I
Well,
think you
I'm
wanted
going
to talk
to.
about
Yeah, I'm going to just probably poo-poo the idea of Jordan, or at least put a kind of
good, good, good.
spanner in the works as such. I agree with you. The coach was doing fantastic. He was able to kind of turn the corner, and they're very much well, for the last 5 years, they've been horrendous to watch. They're probably one of the worst teams that I've kind of. They're a good standard, but they've never played very exciting football as such. And they would seem to be turning the corner, but they've just changed their coach. Hussein Amoutas come in, the Moroccan.
Win.
Probably last month, I think,
Oh
which
no.
came as a surprise, really. And I think most in Jordan football are kind of like, where does this leave us? Where are we going to go for them? So I think there's a big question mark back on them, which is, I would agree with you, it's a shame. They were turning the corner and seemed to be kind of
Well,
somebody to potentially watch out for. So I apologise for
R.I.P.
that.
R.I.P. That prediction. Let's switch it over to Uzbekistan then. I can can I
Mm.
change my pick to them? I think on the Asian game, you guys just interviewed one of their upcoming players. Which, by the way, I will
Mm.
put the links to the Asian game down below. It's the best place on the internet to go for any news regarding the Asian game. Period. Club International. So you guys should check that out. You probably know this team a little bit more than I do. I've seen them in the past. I know they're playing the United States in September, which I'm very
Mm.
excited about.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I just kind of know them from their past performances at 2019 and for Shmurodov.
Mm.
That's kind of like all I know
Mm.
about Uzbekistan. Could you maybe shine some light on my pick that I don't know much about?
Yeah, and I think it's definitely a hipster choice because I think they will be the unknown
I am a
team at the
hipster.
World Cup. And yeah, exactly. They will be the hipster choice at 2026 because I'm convinced they're going to be one of the teams that are going to get one of these expanded spots, and it'll be the kind of topical thing on every kind of ESPN or BBC kind of article. Who is Uzbekistan, etc. They have always been the bridesmaids of Asian football. They've always missed out for one way or the other. They've always just missed out on kind of success. They've always just missed out on World Cups, on Olympics, etc. But it feels different at the moment. I think it's spearheaded by, as you mentioned, Eldar Shomurodov, Angeladin Masharipov, who is at Al Nassr at the moment with Ronaldo. Both of those two players will leave in the summer. So Shomurodov, his time at Roma seems to have passed. Masharipov is being squeezed out by Saudi Arabian money at the moment. They've got bigger players to kind of go after. So it'll be interesting where they go for the next 6 months. But they're two integral players that they need to be performing if they're going to do anything at the Asian Cup. Around them is a very, very impressive young setup as such. There's a lot of good young players coming through under 23, under 20 level. As you mentioned, we had a conversation with Abuzbek Faizuliev, who's an incredible talent in terms of he's 19 and he's already spearheading some of the kind of senior team, let alone kind of the pressure that's on his shoulders. And he seems a player that will be great through. If they can have a kind of a breakthrough, some of these players could really kind of make an impact in Eastern Europe. There's discussions with the arrangements with Turkey about how kind of Uzbek players will be considered as foreign. They won't be considered as foreigners within their kind of quota, so they might have a way in that way. But generally, the team is really the team is very exciting. The coach, as I say, Shreko Katanec did a really good job at Iraq, moved on to Uzbekistan, did very similar there. He stabilised everything. It doesn't need to be this kind of defence-first football that Uzbekistan have been used to. So they're very exciting. I think there'll potentially be a result or two at this Asian Cup. Whether it's too early for these young players to really kind of blossom, I think it'll all be on Shomurodov and Masharipov this time around, but definitely one to look out for ahead of 2026, because I think if not now, I don't think Uzbekistan are going to really struggle to ever find a better opportunity at qualifying for the World Cup. And then everybody will start to kind of talk about them as much as we will.
Yeah, my concern for Uzbekistan when I looked back, I dusted off the old archives. It seems like they really struggle to beat the big teams. Like they're really good at beating the teams they're supposed to, like a Bahrain or Vietnam, whoever it may be. But then, I'm looking at the results in the knockouts, and as soon as they come up against Australia, they get destroyed in 2011, 6-0. They lose to Korea in 2015. That was a bit better of a showing. Son Heung-min brace in extra time. I just don't know if they're to what you're saying, if they're ready right now to be able to beat even like a Saudi Arabia in a knockout game. And I have no faith in Saudi Arabia. We can talk about them next, but that would be my biggest concern. I did want to ask you, how similar does the U23 team play and the U20 team play to the senior team?
In terms of style of football, etc.
Yeah. Like kind of more defensive, sit back.
Yeah, Uzbek football is defensive by nature. I don't know if that's a societal thing and how it's kind of been kind of relationship with breaking up from the Soviet Union, etc. But it's always been a case of defensive security has been their number one paramount. As soon as they get a coach that wants to play attacking football and they concede a few, there's public outcry. Whereas if there's a load of 0-0s, they prefer that sort of thing. So there's always that kind of element of defensive security. Shreko Katanec, as I say, he's a pragmatist. He's very, very well at managing the mood. He's slowly got this team in a bit more of an attacking frame of mind. They play a 3-5-2 formation at the moment with him, which hasn't been kind of copied with the youth teams, but there is some excitement there. And as I say, the under-20 team that's just come through is probably better in a defensive sense than an attacking sense, but there are a number of wide men that have had experience, moved out to Russia and moved back, who have got the qualities there to kind of bring through. I think it's an exciting time, but the same with Faizuliev, and I think where we were talking at the top of the show about Son Heung-min and how much of he's been a success for Korean football is the fact that you've got Kim Ji-soo, who was one of the better players at the Under-20 World Cup for Korea, has gone straight to Brentford. He's not needed to go to a middle ground team. Abuzbek Fazulev won't be able to do that jump because there's not that understanding of what Uzbek football means to a European club.
Hmm.
They'll wait until he comes through, and a lot of that is development pathways for for Asian players, and that's usually the hampering. That's the reason why you don't see West Asian players in the Premier League. It's not because they're not good enough; it's because
Hmm.
we don't know they're good enough.
Hmm.
We know what a Japanese player is. We know what a Korean player is. We know what an Iranian. We know what an Australian player is. We don't know the other side of things, and I think that's the limiting factor for some of these. So we need some
Hmm.
pioneers like Shomurodov, like Masharipov, to go out there and get that sort of thing. Um, so as I say, there was something very interesting talents to be watching out for in Uzbekistan.
And I think the nickname, the White Wolves, it's got to be top 10, inarguably, in all of world football, let alone Asia. So for that reason, I'll be rooting for them. I remember, I think it was the U23 Asian Cup when they beat Japan in the semifinals, two
Yep,
nothing.
last year, yeah,
Yeah,
yep,
Japan just they did such a good job of stifling anything
mm,
that the Japanese did, and I
mm,
thought that was a pretty fluid attacking team. Certainly better than they did at the U20 World Cup. We don't have to talk about that. Um,
mm,
a burning question that I need to see answered is regarding Qatar, and I
mm.
want to know: is this the worst fall off from a previous winner in Asian Cup history?
Well, we'll see. We'll see if see their rebound at the Asian Cup, I suppose. But they're in a better place than they were 6 months ago. They've got Carlos Queiroz in charge, so we're hoping that it's kind of a complete change. But it was always going to be that case. The way that such a small nation was able to go from zero to heroes within kind of a very kind of short space of time. The Aspire Academy, the QFA, they did a lot of work to make that team what it was. But outside of that team, outside of about 12 players, and outside of that form of those 12 players, they had very little. And those 12 players are all gone, as you would do in world football, go in and out of form, and they've dropped off the boil. That leaves you with very little. And that ahead of the World Cup, that was the case. Everybody was running into that World Cup in no form whatsoever. There wasn't this kind of young kid that was playing really well in the Qatar Stars League because you had everybody in the camp. You had no one else to kind of call on. So it really fell off the boil a little bit. From that kind of very kind of attacking focused team that really took everybody by storm in 2019, we're now looking at a team that is in the mold of Carlos Queiroz, defense
Yeah.
heavy, trying to kind of soak up possession, attack on the attack, and really be the underdog. They want to be the underdog again, which I don't know if they're going to be able to do at home as champions of the Asian Cup.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
Carlos Queiroz will be doing that. The Mexico game the other night was a kind of a classic in that of a game where they shouldn't have won. They should have been out of sights quite early on, but were able to hang in on there. And they're trying to bring this mentality through with a new set of players, which Kyrgios is in charge of. I don't think they'll go very far, but yeah, I still think we're in a better place than we were 6 months ago.
Yeah, well, their group, I think they're pretty fortunate with how
Mm.
doable it is. I mean, I would say China might be the second best team here with Tajikistan and
Yep.
Lebanon, perhaps. I mean, sounds like there's
Mm.
something going on with the Lebanese camp. So I think they might benefit from having a easy group. I've been watching guitar very closely. I've been trying to tell my CONCACAF subscribers. I was like, these guys, they're going to make it to the knockouts. Like, I'm telling you, Carlos Queiroz is going to find a way. He's going to play the ugliest football we've ever seen, and he's going to get them to the knockouts. And if damn near half the team wasn't suspended for the Panama game, I think they would win. Not, and I think Panama have been good, but that Queiroz ball, oh my gosh, that Mexico game, mother of God, like it was the Queiroz masterclass. It really was. It
Mm.
was Egypt, AFCON, Queiroz, 10 men behind the ball, just last second clearances. And you saw what it meant to the players after they advanced. You know, they're jumping up, they're hugging him. I think that it's good enough for CONCACAF. I'm curious what it'll do in
Mm.
Asia. I was looking, seems like the worst we've ever seen a defending champion do was a quarterfinals. This happened 4 times. Japan 1996 and 2015, Australia 2019, Iraq 2011.
Yeah, sounds right. Yeah, I think it would have been Iraq. That was probably be the question mark against it because it's
Yeah.
always usually been a big team. But well, one of the kind of diminishing things about this Asian Cup is that so many teams get through to the knockout rounds because you've got that kind of fallback of 3 teams will potentially get through each of the groups, barring a
Yeah.
couple of the players. So it will take some kind of calamity for Qatar to not get out of the group. Whether they'll get kind of quarterfinals or beyond, who knows? And I think it will be very Kyrgios style football, and I don't think anybody would like to play a Kyrgios style football. And it will depend mentally between the ears of those players. Are they ready to kind of have that pressure again? Because some of those players are gone mentally. They're gone. They're not. The mental fatigue is there. And that's where it's been quite key with the squad selection that he sent over to America this time, is that they've been given 8 to their key players are not even there because they're fatigued, they're shattered. They've been on this journey for 10 years. They don't want to kind of continue on this. They've been given the summer off. Even Almo Ali, who's barely got a minute in America, because Kyrgios sees that they need to have a new generation of footballers who've not lived through that World Cup misery, because it is misery. If your whole life has been based around succeeding at a World Cup that within 10, 15 minutes was all over the place against Ecuador, it's going to be difficult to come back from that. So it'll be interesting how he kind of deploys that.
Do you think a lot of those players are done, like they will not be called up to the Asian Cup, or what do you think? Like Akram
I
Afif,
think,
for example.
yeah, I think you can't not call up Akram Afif. I think he's that good a player, generally from an Asian perspective, but also from a Qatari perspective. I don't think Qatar have got that kind of depth in the squad. But I think it's quite clever of Kyrgios to kind of get a core together now that have gone through this Gold Cup campaign. If they can get out of it and they're not eliminated in an embarrassing fashion, they'll have that mentality going forward. And then he can start to bring back which experienced players he wants. Some will fit his style, some won't. But I think Afif's always been that one that's a technical ability a lot higher than anybody else in the team.
Mm-hmm. I will say, of the Qatari players I've seen at the Gold Cup so far, I've been very impressed by Abdurrazak. I know he got suspended, which just sucks because there's not a lot of talent in the Gold Cup. I would have liked to have seen as much of it on display. And I think it's the attacking midfielder Tarek is his last name. I think 20 years old, maybe. I might be getting that wrong, but I think there's a few. No, I'm not going to call them gems. That might be an overreaction, but promising players that
Yep.
Kirosh might have unearthed here, which I'm kind of surprised by, given how awful the Qatari youth teams have been doing. I mean, they've been getting blitzed by. Was it Australia that beat them 10-0 or
Yeah, 9-1, I think it was in the end.
9-1? Woo!
Yeah, they have been blitzed on a number of occasions. I think it's that mental exhaustion. Even at the club level, Al Dahale got blitzed 7-0 against Al Hilal in the semi-final of the Champions League. So
Dang.
it's not a good place for Qatari. Qatari football is in a bad state at the moment in terms of understanding where do we go now after everything's been built up to one event. So you kind of, once that event's gone, and especially the way that it happened, where do we go next? Especially when your neighbours, Saudi Arabia, are spending a fortune on other areas. It's a question mark. Where are they going to go? They are a small nation at the end of it. Are they going to gravitate back to the pack and kind of back to what they normally would be, which would be in the top 10 of Asia? Or are they going to try and continue to be at the top? It's a defining point for them.
It seems like the last time and the only time that the host of the Asian Cup went out in the group stage was that quad joint bid in 2007, where Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, and Malaysia all hosted the tournament, and only Vietnam made it out. We touched on it already. I don't think Qatar goes out in the group stage. Kind of fortunate for them. I think their group is a little too soft. But let's talk about Saudi Arabia, because that's another storyline. Is there more to this team, post Bernard, no less, outside of spending an obscene amount of money on the Saudi Pro League? What do we think?
Yeah, it's an odd one. I suppose 6 months ago, or even it's about 8 months ago now, isn't it? When they beat Argentina, they were on the top of the world. This put Saudi Arabian football on the map. There's probably a little bit of complacency since that point. Hervé Renard was a surprise to go. I don't think anybody in the Saudi Football Federation was expecting it. It was a big surprise. I think they knew that there was going to be challenges for his signature, but I don't think they expected him to go at this point. And then there was quite a reassured way of doing it, because I think there's a maturity within the Saudi Football Federation of saying, we won't jump into this, we won't appoint a coach straight away, we could take our time. But since then, there's been the explosion within Saudi Pro League football, and the priorities have swung away from national team football towards the kind of big spending of that. We saw that with Jorge Jesus, who we expected to be coach of the Saudi Arabian team. They were expected to announce it in June. Late in the day, now he's coach of Al Hilal, and that probably shows the priorities are switching away from the Saudi government and the Saudi Football Federation, are probably focusing on the club game a little bit more than the international game. There's probably good reasons for that. The expanded World Cup means that they probably have got more chance of getting back to the World Cup. There isn't that kind of persistence that we need to jump back into that. Is the Asian Cup, as I say, the big thing at the moment? Probably not compared to the Saudi Pro League, so there's going to be a lot more focus on that. So it's going to be interesting, because I think there's concerns in attack, especially in attacking areas. Given all this international talent that's flooding into the league, there's going to be less minutes for players to actually get under their belts ahead of for the Asian Cup and World Cup. Mm-hmm. Who the coach will be, I think that is essential. I think Hervé Renard did change a lot of things, and he was able to gel a very kind of defensive mentality that has always been kind of there for Saudi football, and a more attacking, modern day kind of style, which most of these players haven't had witness to, because they haven't been to Europe, they haven't been outside of their comfort zone. So it is a very interesting one. I think probably before Renard was sacked, I would have probably put them as one of my favourites, to be honest. But now I've got real concerns that they won't be kind of contesting it with Japan or Australia in the final two, unfortunately.
Yeah. Oh, I'll disagree with you there. I'm very confident that Saudi Arabia, even with Renard, I know he's got 2 AFCONs, which is very impressive, but I have no faith in this team. I think the Argentina result was exceptional. I just don't know if this team is that good. I really don't think they're that good. And I kind of look at the roster heading into the next Asian Cup. It kind of seems like they're still going to be relying on some similar faces like Al Dosari to kind of carry the team and score the goals. And I just don't see them beating, kind of similar to Uzbekistan, the really good teams. Like, I think they can beat a Bahrain. I think they could beat... I mean, let me pull another team that they could beat China. I think they could beat China for sure, but I don't think they can beat Japan. I don't think they could beat Korea. Australia, I think, beat them soundly. And I look at their results in the Asian Cup recently. I don't have them in front of me, so I apologize, but it's really underwhelming. Really, really underwhelming. They got some bad losses in there historically. I think they didn't make it out of the group maybe in 2015 or 2011. I don't know. I don't know where the hope is for the Saudi national team, and part of that is also the money injection into the Saudi Pro League. Like you said, we're going to see less minutes for these guys, less opportunities to develop. They're already at best, the 4th strongest Asian team. I think they're more like 5, to be honest. I don't know. I'm selling this team. If this was a stock, I'm selling everything from Saudi Arabia. The one young guy I like is the Saud Abdul Hamid, who played at the U23 Asian Cup. I think he got MVP or something. That guy was good. That guy looks good. Everybody else, I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced, Martin. You're going to have to sell these guys harder to me, because I'm not seeing it right now.
No, I get what you mean in terms of there are question marks about that next level. And I think talent-wise, in the core of the team, in defensive areas, in midfield, I think they have got some good quality players. As you mentioned, Saad Abdul Hamid, Hassan Tambakti is a very, very good centre-back. So I think they've got some good players. They made it to, I'm sure, the amount of youth tournaments that has been in AFC the last couple of years, it's quite difficult to remember who's won which. But they made the semi-finals, the final of the U23s last year. They made the U23s previously, so they've got good experience through youth football. But it's always been that question mark of who's going to play in that attacking areas. The example is that probably shows why they won't be in that kind of stuff. It's their star striker, Firas Al-Burakan. Couldn't make it at one of the big 4 because he couldn't get minutes because they've got so many international players. He went to Al Fatah a couple of years ago, He's done all right. He's done quite well for a mid-table striker. He scored 10, 15 goals in there. He's chosen not to go back to one of those big teams because he can't get minutes in that team. So he's going to be someone
Mm,
who has prioritised minutes, but he's playing for a team that's in mid-table Saudi Arabian football, which you can imagine isn't at the standard he wants to be at. And I think that'll be the biggest question. I don't think we'll see a Saudi Arabian player next year in the Pro League to score more than 10 goals, because I don't think they'll get the opportunities amongst all these other international talent, and that will have a hampering effect on the international team. Even before this period of big spending, previous coaches have done false nines and what have you, because they just don't have that central forward. So it's a way forward if they can think of that way. If we're going to have Bielsa or somebody like that who will kind of think of a way of getting around it, that would be brilliant. But at the moment, it looks a bit disjointed, especially ahead of the Asian Cup.
Bielsa to Saudi Arabia would be an insane appointment. That's a
It would.
statement if I've ever heard one. Just I don't want to go too deep on this, but like in short, why do so few Saudi players leave the Saudi league?
I think two reasons. I think the main reason is money and comfort. Why would you leave the relative comfort of being the biggest player in the world? And this is always gets kind of like thrown around in European football, the fact that there's no culture, there's no football culture in these kind of countries, which is a load of rubbish. There's
Yeah, it's
kind of like
ridiculous.
60,000 people coming to watch you every game, and you're the hero in that country.
Yeah,
You'll swap that to go and play, and this is where the problem is. You won't be able to go straight to the Premier League. You'll have to go to a kind of a small club in Cyprus before you get to kind of move on, and you're going to take a pay cut and you're going to take that hard yards, and you're not going to be that success. This generation won't be a success because you need to have a couple of generations behind you before you can get into the top leagues in the side of things. So I think
right.
it's hard, but I think scouts don't want to kind of go this way. It's always a bit of a gamble to go that way. The prime example is Omar Abdulrahman, and over the last 10 years was the biggest talent that came out of Asian football for the UAE. He he had trials for Man City, etc. All those kind of key things that everybody wants to kind of look at. But he wanted more than he could probably get in Europe. He wanted to not only he wanted to go to Benfica and be a starting player at Benfica. He wanted to be on the same money as everybody else. He didn't want to have that kind of chance of trying to build it in. In the end, he goes back and beats a star in Asia, which, to be honest, it is an achievement. And I think Saudi Arabian football now is challenging that top five, top six leagues in the world. If we can start to get more consistency, I think you've got that kind of quality. So it might be a question mark of, do they need to go abroad? The question mark from a talent perspective is that the defenders are all getting great experience. So I say these defenders are going to come through quite well because they're
Yeah.
going to be taking on Ronaldo, they're going to take on Firmino, but the attackers are just going to be sat on the bench and not getting the same kind of service. So it's one way or the other, really.
UAE, you said he's from that one player.
Yep. Yeah, Omar Abdulrahman. Yeah, or Amori, as they used to always call him. He's the player with the afro. You
Oh,
might have
okay.
known.
Okay, I think I've
Uh,
seen some like streets
yeah,
won't forget compilations or something
Yeah,
of that player.
definitely. He's kind of like the epitome of the last 10 years of Asian football, West Asian football. So his Panenka against Japan in the Asian Cup in Australia was is something to look back at. I think he's a talent to behold. But sadly now he's had so many injuries. He's on the cusp of retirement. So a missed opportunity, sadly.
Dang. Yeah, that's too bad. I did have UAE as a very, very small potential dark horse just because they've done really well at the last two Asian Cups. But I don't have enough insight to really expand on that. But maybe that guy's Panenka was one of the reasons. Um, I want to wrap up with probably the most important question, and that is which team lifts the trophy when it's all said and done. So I'm kind of putting you on the spot with this. Who wins the Asian Cup? Who do you think?
I'm going to say Japan and be really kind of controversial. That's not really content at all, is it? So we've had doubts, and regular listeners of the Asian game, we've had doubts about the approach that Hajime Moriyasu has had with the side, even going through for the World Cup. I think he was always playing a counter-attacking play of football, which was always kind of, it felt deficient because the amount of quality players that they had, they could have controlled some of this possession. They should be able to do it. but they've always played that kind of way in Asian football as well. But we've seen in the last couple of international windows, they've started to trust them a little bit more, a bit more attacking focused. So I'm hoping the fact that they've got so much talent at the moment, it's ridiculous how many attacking players they've got to choose
Crazy.
from. And that kind of change of mentality from Moriyasu to go, actually, we will go for this. I think it's all rising to it should be a stroll for them, really, because as I say, I think Arnold's done a great job for Australia, but I think they're still in transition. I think this young generation is going to come through and do better than the last generation, but I think it's a bit too soon for them. So, how about yourself? Who do you think is going to win?
I'd love to disagree with you, but yeah, I'm gonna go Japan as well. I don't see a team with Asia being able to match their depth like all over the pitch. Maybe the biggest weakness. Maybe this is something we could discuss. I'm not super convinced at the goalkeeping position. I think that's kind of a small question mark, and maybe left back. Like, is Hiroki Ito going to play there for the entire Asian Cup? But other than that, I mean, this midfield is stacked, and this Mitoma, Junior Ito, and I don't really care who you put up top. Like, that is about as good as it gets for Asia. That's going to be a lot to handle. I don't really see anybody's fullbacks outside of maybe the Aussies, honestly, being able to do anything against that. That's kind of my analysis of Japan. Good all over the place, except goalkeeper. Uh,
Yeah, as I say, the only question mark I have is the coach in terms of Hajime Moriyasu and the fact that he's not the most excited coach, and
no.
put that coach with the most exciting team in Asian football history potentially is a little bit of a frustration. And I know they got a lot of credibility through the World Cup, but they got lucky in a couple of instances as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think this team that could win the World Cup, I'm going to say that, in the next 30 years, they're going that way. Is it the right coaching appointment at this time? That's the only question mark. And if, I don't know, if Japan play Qatar at the moment, Moriyasu against Kyrgios, that could be an interesting battle that
Yeah.
really could unstuck Japan, and they could kind of get stuck on that side of things. So that's my
Mm-hmm.
only kind of question mark potentially.
Yeah, I'm with you. I go to battle quite frequently with people I know, like defending not just Asian football, but Japan. I'm like, you guys don't understand because you don't watch the games. This is a very good team. I found it very funny, just a small anecdote. After Japan dominated the U.S. in that friendly right before the World Cup. And it's like everybody got amnesia, completely forgot that happened. And now there's like this big debate, is CONCACAF better than Asia? And I'm just like, I just don't see it. I don't see you taking the best three in CONCACAF and putting them up against Asia, and much less like 1 through 10. I think Asia's definitely stronger than CONCACAF in that region
Mm.
or in that department. So yeah, I mean, Moriyasu is a concern. I'll never truly understand his Costa Rica squad selection in the World Cup. That was
Mm.
that's what I expect Klinsmann to do, not a Moriyasu, not somebody who's going to win the Asian Cup. But I feel like they have to be a favorite. And like I think I said at the beginning, I got Australia probably number two, but maybe a bit too soon. I'll slide Korea three because I love Kim and Jae and Son, but they can't make mistakes if they're going to win this Asian Cup. Korea, in my opinion.
Mm.
Do you have a
Yeah,
favorite
no,
team?
as I say, I don't. No favorite team either in Asia or in club football within Asia either. So most people will think that I'm an Uzbekistan football fan. I want Uzbekistan to deliver on their hopes. But to be honest, I will watch Asian football for kind of the enjoyment of the subsets and everything like that, and seeing young players prosper and make their potential. And I think there were a couple of nations within here and a couple of players that were able to do that. But yeah, I'm not rooting for anyone in particular.
What's your quick fire U.S. men's national team Uzbekistan prediction? What you thinking for that game?
Well, it depends which USA stance takes up. Really, I was very impressed with USA, and I'm generally kind of very kind of cynical about American football generally. But they were very very good in the World Cup. So hats off to you guys. You're obviously doing something good there. And Uzbekistan are developing. So I kind of sneakily hope that everybody underestimates what Uzbekistan can do, and they really turn you over, and it's a real surprise. But if USA play to their full strength, yeah, they're kind of competing at that next level. The Japans of this world, aren't they, at the moment? So yeah,
Hmm.
I'm looking forward to it. Though it'll be good.
Yeah, I think it'll be a good game. I think Uzbek draw. I think they'd be feeling
Mm.
pretty good about
Oh
that,
yeah, 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 definitely.
especially in the United States where the U.S. is very
Yeah.
strong. Well, all right, Martin, we're coming up on the hour mark here. I don't
Mhm.
really have any more massive questions or storylines for us to discuss, so I kind of want to end by having you tell everybody where they can find you and all your work that you do.
No, thank you very much, and I've really enjoyed this. So yeah, I'm on Twitter at Martin underscore Lowe underscore. I write for the Asian Game, but also speak on the Asian Game podcast. So we have it kind of every week or 2 weeks, interviews with players, insight from on the ground, etc. So we try and cover as much as possible. So yeah, give us a follow and give us a listen.
For sure. I will put all of your social links, both your own and the Asian game, down below in the description. Guys, you absolutely have to check out the podcast. I listen to it pretty much every single episode that drops. It's top quality, and you just won't find something like that covering Asia. It's very, very rare. So I deeply appreciate what you and the guys do over there at the Asian game. You guys let us know in the comments what you think of this episode, and make sure you leave a like if you're watching on YouTube and hit subscribe so you don't miss any future Asian content here on Deadball TV. If you're listening on streaming platforms, make sure you give the podcast a 5-star rating. We appreciate you guys for watching or listening. Martin, thank you again so much for taking the time to have this conversation. I can't talk this in depth about Asian football with many people. I really enjoyed it. Hopefully, we have you back on the channel. We will see you guys in the next one.